Good morning, Vikings fans, if you still exist at this point. Welcome to Morning Joe's. We were off last Friday, so we didn't get to do a pregame breakdown of the Bills.
But we would have been
Pretty much. I think we dodged a bullet in that regard. But yeah, it's amazing how quickly things can change in the NFL. Well, first of all, I'm Joe Johnson. I own PurplePTSD.com, VikingsTerritory.com. I host this podcast and also the Purple Journal podcast, which is on those sites. I'm here with Joe Oberle, who writes for Purple PTSD, Vikings Territory. He is our editor. He also writes for the Sports Post, and he is on the Purple Journal podcast as well. And we texted a little bit during the game, but we haven't really spoken to one another in the past few days.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those situations where you just don't want to talk to anybody you know that you're connected to through the Vikings app.
Yeah.
Like that.
You know,
just go to the other room and sulk.
Full disclosure, if people aren't familiar with like the way that I write or some of the stuff I've talked about on other shows, I'm kind of the more emotional type of fan. You know, it really, as depressing as this sounds, whether the Vikings win or lose can really affect my mood for a few days. And typically, before I started Purple PTSD, I used to ignore the team up until Wednesday during the week of a loss. Just a regular loss. This is something that is so... I know the way I just kind of describe myself, maybe I lend myself to hyperbole a lot, but this is it seems so cataclysmic, and the best way for me to explain it was that I didn't turn the game on until a few minutes into it. I think I was like 20 minutes late getting home, and my dad said, "You're not going to be happy." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, 2 turnovers. It's 17-0. And I looked at him and I said, "That's impossible." That was my response. That's not possible. And obviously it was. It was. People are saying it's a historic upset. I think it was one of the larger spreads that a team's had in a while, with a 17 or 16.5 point spread. We talked about this last week, not so much in regards to the Bills, but you wrote an article previewing it, kind of saying, I don't want to call it a trap game, but let's look at it that way.
Yeah. I the term trap game became so cliche, when a good team is playing a bad team and they're so easily able to overlook that said bad team as they're coming in, and the team that has nothing to lose plays emotional, inspired football, and the other one doesn't and gets beat. And it actually was. I said it was a bear trap. It was a buffalo trap. But it's speaking to the emotions of it. I was at home watching the game. I usually am in the stadium watching the home games in the press box, but my wife had eye surgery the day before, so I stayed home with her to help her convalesce and I should say recover. And my son was home from Chicago and he wanted to watch the game with me, and so we sat and watched it. And his reaction, I suspect, was a lot like yours. I mean, he kept looking over to me like I had some answer to what was going on here. And the only thing I can say is I've been through it so many times. I mean, the Vikings find a way to lose epically, or to screw up epically. I mean, they're a great team all through the years. They've given us many wins, and they're one of the higher percentage win teams in the league.
Yeah.
In league history. But when they're on a big stage, sometimes they really and they fall off that stage. My gosh, they really go for it. I mean, 38-7 last year. 41 donut. You got. You go back and back. I mean, I've seen them beat, and the 4 Super Bowls. I mean, the first one they were favorited.
I think they were favored in all of them.
Yeah, most of them. I'm not sure all of them, but yeah, certainly 3 of the 4, and they always end up getting their clocks clean, and it's just it's amazing. I mean, even when they got beat by the Atlanta Falcons to go to the Super Bowl, that was their best, highest scoring offense in league history, and it was a shoo-in. They should have had it, and they take a knee and fall off that stage. It's so I guess that's a long way to say that I've seen it so many times that I'm not as affected as long as I used to be when I was your age, Joe. I probably, I took it hard. I mean, it gets to be Wednesday before I started thinking about the next game and the last one. And so I know what you're talking about, but I don't. It's not that effective. But this was so incredibly bad. I mean, I think one of the things I put in the story was that there's been like 6 games where a team was at home and they had a 16 or more,
point spread.
Yes, going into the game. 16 since 1991 or something like that have lost, and those teams all lost by a combined score of 27 points, while the Vikings lost by 21 themselves.
Wow,
so bad.
I saw a quote in an article, I think on the Viking Age, that referred to Bill Parcells and his experience coaching the Giants, and he said being a fan of the Giants only brings you euphoria and what was the other one?
Heartbreak.
Pretty much, yeah. I wrote it down. And it seems like, euphoria and disaster. That's what it was. And that just seems to be the case. I mean, I have so many questions about how it was such a team-wide failure. You can't really, the turnovers hurt, and we'll get into this a little bit, but it seemed like the entire team was on autopilot. I mean, there was, I think, the second touchdown where the receiver was completely wide open. They couldn't cover the Allen's ability to scramble at all. I think Zimmer said that it wasn't that they were too confident going into the game, but then I saw a quote that contradicted that. And then there's also the quote from Kyle Rudolph, who said, well, once a year we do this, and we're just lucky that it happened in September, as opposed to like last year when it happened against the Eagles, or the year before when the Colts beat us or whatever. And so I've been going back and forth as to how panicked I should be about this, and I really wanted to get your thoughts on it so I can see where I'm at on the barometer, because it seemed like, I saw articles from newspapers that were like, Vikings embarrassed, exposed, like they're not good, there's something wrong with this defense. It hasn't been the same since the Eagles. Cousins played like garbage. The running game had the least amount of snaps since, like, I think there's only been 2 other teams since like 1930 that have had 6 or less snaps in a whole game. It was, you can't overstate how bad this was. And the crowd let them have it. But do you look at it and say, okay, well, they can build from this, or with a short week going against the team that is widely considered to be the number 1 team in the league, a team that they played against last year, beat and actually played really well against last year. How bad do you think this is? Do you think that this is like, my initial thought, Super Bowl, give me a break. Like, this team has no spine. Something is wrong. I don't know what it is. I was a big part of my cousin's thing, and I didn't emphasize this enough in writing or talking about it, was that, and this is good for Sheldon Richardson also, I felt like the team needed a new leader, someone that can, like, make sure that they don't do what they did against the Eagles.
Joe, you're asking about 17 questions in this.
I know, but that's...
So stop. Let me unpack a little bit of it.
But I just don't know what to make of it. I don't know if I should sell the sites and move into the woods.
Wow. Well, first of all, I was glad to hear that Parcells quote, because one of the things that occurred to me as this was happening, I've experienced so much, as I was saying before, and I started thinking, is this just the Vikings? Is it just this fan base that has to go through this crud, and it's good to see that at least the Giants treat their fan base the same way. But
at least they've won.
Right, I know the Vikings, like have that missing element to theirs. But I was online. I saw a text from Luke during the game. How people were already, Luke Braun, who's on our podcast on Wednesday nights, Purple Journal podcast, and he said he was already fielding all kinds of people on his timeline that were saying the Vikings are not prepared, emotionally down, and he said how that's just an excuse, and I told him, so I kind of went back to him and said, I don't care what you say. I mean, Luke is a numbers guy, and he said he was going to try to figure out some ways to see what was going on here. And I just said to him, there's going to be all kinds of ways this manifests itself, numbers-wise. And but I said, these guys were clearly emotionally not prepared. You hold out Everson Griffin, which we'll get into later. You hold out Dalvin Cook, who probably both could have played under other circumstances. That's your first signal to that. Maybe we can slide by this and get to Thursday and where we need those guys healthy for a really big game. And that was the perceived thing at the time. And then your team comes out and they're just flat as heck. And the momentum of the Rock starts coming downhill on you. First they're off the field if Linval Joseph doesn't hit this. Did you see that?
Yeah, the helmet to helmet.
Oh, God. They're off the field, 3 and out, and I think suddenly the game has a completely different tenor. Maybe, the Vikings go down and put up some points, but instead they fumble on the first series, and they fumble on the second series, and they're down 17-0 before you can even blink or get home from wherever you were coming. And we saw them last year in the Philadelphia game. As soon as they got the turnovers and got down, it went sideways.
I was just going to say that it's not dissimilar to. I mean, they scored on the first drive in that game, but the turnovers took the wind out of their sails. It seems like
suddenly if you're not emotionally ready, I think you feel like you're running uphill in molasses, and I think every team, and I've said this just talking this with Luke, and every team in this league is so good to a certain degree, and the difference between them is so minute that if you are not mentally prepared, ready to go out there and give it this week, you can get beat by anybody. And look at how the Bills played. They were fired up. They were loose as heck because they had just become the worst team in the league, and they were getting roasted, and their running back or their cornerback quits at halftime, and their head coach is taking over, play calling. They couldn't have been in a worse situation. So what did they got to lose? They came up and they went for it. And the Vikings thought, oh my God, we're in a fight here. We better get our crud together. And all of a sudden, Cousins looks like he's a cat on a hot tin roof, in the pocket, and he starts fumbling, and it turns a certain way. And as much as you can, sometimes you can't turn that around. But my goodness, it was complete and total. There was not a player there. The only good player that was worth talking about was Dan Bailey, only because he hardly got on the field. He did an onside kick very well, and even that didn't work. And it was a beautiful onside kick.
Yeah, so, it was perfect.
My point is, I to answer your question, I don't know exactly what you can learn from this. I think it's great that they have a game on Thursday. I wish it wasn't against the Rams, who are looking like the best team in the league, on the road at their place, because there's too much turmoil here. But if these guys are professionals and they get to look at themselves in the mirror, they get to throw this one away and just start hyper-focusing on this next game. Because if they show up like this, oh my God, it's going to be 83.
It'll be a bloodbath.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what you learned from it, to be honest with you.
One thing that I wrote down in my notes that Luke texted both of us during the game, I'm pretty sure it was him, blown coverages, big penalties, bad pocket presence. And then I think he said all of those things, aren't necessarily correctable or like a fluke. They could be sustainable. I do listening to the media last week, like guys on KFan were saying, well, who can we bench in the third and fourth quarter when they get up? Like, people were way too cocky about this game, which we've established. But beyond that, I worry about the line. I'm really I think the team needs Elflein back. I think the word is that he's going to be back. But Cousins is known to fumble. He brought up the fact that that's a huge emphasis on the offense every single day, every single practice, 2 hands on the ball. But it just seems like, man, I don't know.
There was a quote from one of the Bills that said they knew that about Cousins, that if they could get to him and get him out of the pocket scrambling, he's got 17 fumbles in his career now, which is he's one of the highest in the league. And so they knew that going in, so that was what they were trying to do. And my goodness, it worked to a key, and it got them that lead, which the Vikings couldn't slog through to get back into it. They came back against the Packers. They came back, but so they had that ability. But I don't know what the heck happened. Maybe they're so caught out by surprise in a team that just wanted it that there was no getting back. And yeah, my concern is you go back to the Saints game from last year, and second half of that game, the Vikings were, they were saved by a miracle, as we all know, and it's true, they were getting beat then, and then they got their clocks cleaning out in Philly, and I think they played okay against San Francisco, but then they got down again against the Packers, and then this, so all of a sudden you have to say, are we not as good as we thought we were? Or So
and that's a terrifying question. It really is, because you look at this team and our confidence in the offseason. Obviously, they've gone all in multiple times. Getting Bradford was a huge move for the pieces they gave up. Bringing Cousins in, signing him to the biggest contract in NFL history at the time, and then locking in almost every player outside of Anthony Barr on defense and saying, look at this core that we have. And it just seems like... I don't want to say this was a big game and they fold under that type of pressure, but my dad said it best about a few minutes into the third quarter when it was obvious that the other shoe wasn't going to drop or get picked up, I guess, and they weren't going to start scoring. He goes, this isn't a Super Bowl team. Give me a break. Super Bowl teams don't do this. And I kind of feel the same way. I want to look at it the way that Rudolph put it and say, okay, well, we can build and learn from this. But it was such a systemic failure in ways that I don't know, like, to build off what Luke's texted, that they can improve upon outside of Elflein coming back. I don't know offhand if you've ever heard precisely what Cousins' deal is with fumbles. Does he have, like, Culpeperian hands?
I don't know that.
I don't know why that happens.
We've heard about him, the rap on him is he gets a little skittish under pressure. And he didn't exhibit that so much the first 2 weeks of the season, but he did on Sunday, and he was making some poor decisions back there with the ball, and the one where he did fumble and run out there. I mean, I saw a play online from the end zone view. He had several players open. If he'd have just stepped up and zinged it, and made that decision, but instead he tucked it, and some guy came up and knocked it out of his hand. So. I think when the pressure's on and the worst is coming on, your natural instincts are going to take over, and that's kind of what happened with him there. So it's probably something he's got to battle, and the Vikings they've got to find a way to protect him. The protection was atrocious on Sunday, and Elflein was back. He did get in and play some, but hopefully he should be started this week, and I think that's when you'll see he has to, because. If they put out the line that they had on Sunday against the Rams defensive front, bring on Trevor Siemian. So it's a huge concern. I don't know how you improve that. I mean, Cousins is who he is. Perhaps he's great, and he just has to battle his natural instincts, maybe to panic and the line's got to protect him. It's I would agree with your dad to a certain degree. That was certainly not a Super Bowl team out there. So after going through 4 Super Bowl losses, this rap on the Vikings was always there, that they were Bud Grant didn't have them prepared, that emotionally, that they came in maybe favored, thinking they were they were it, and then all of a sudden somebody with nothing to lose because no one's giving them a chance comes in there and spanks them, and it's like you can't do that in the NFL. You have to be up and ready to go for 16 weeks of the regular season for 4 playoff games, and it's incredible. I don't know.
What is strange to me in looking at the box score and the stats? Listen to some of these stats. First downs, Buffalo had 16, we had 21. Total plays, they had 63, we had 65. Total yards, 292. The Vikings had 292. Total drives, Buffalo 11, Minnesota 12. Yards per play, 4.6 for Buffalo, 4.5 for Minnesota. Passing, 164 yards for Buffalo, 278 for Minnesota. So I wonder...
Take away 2 fumbles in the red zone.
Yeah, and then the field position was atrocious. I think they started, the Vikings started at the 8-yard line or worse on 5 drives and under the 15 in the majority of them.
And the Bills didn't do anything in the second half. I mean,
that's
they
true.
Didn't have to. They went in. They got more conservative. They just had to milk the clock to essentially for 2 quarters and play defense against a team that just couldn't find a way to put a drive together. So that's why. I mean, I think your point is these stats end up pretty even, but they're all such garbage stats for the Vikings.
That's true.
14 rushing yards, Joe.
6 attempts.
This is the tales of the tape. We're probably going through them right now already, but 14 rushing yards in a game, 6 attempts, 2 of them by your scrambling quarterback. That's 4 rushing yards, 2 per half by both Mike Boone and Latavius Murray. You're not going to win any football games that way. And
55 pass attempts.
Yes, for guys like me who've got Diggs on one team and Adam Thielen on 2 more, it was nice to pad stats, but at least for Thielen, but it does nothing for this team to win. So it was such a massive breakdown on every facet of this game, and it starts. You know what? I mean, I don't think you can. And my point was with going back and forth with Luke, I was maintaining that this was not a mentally prepared or fired up and motivated team, and you can't maybe. You got to look at what maybe happened, prior to this game with Everson Griffin, who is not suited up due to a personal reason. He's one of the leaders on your defense. That's gonna take a toll on you.
Yeah, what do you make of all that? It's a really precarious situation. It's really sad. And we don't know a lot of the information, but I'm hoping it's not perhaps what it seems to be. I guess I checked if I may. I was listening to Tom Pelissero report this morning. The latest that he's got is that Everson Griffin is in a local hospital. Has been there for a couple days. He's under evaluation for a serious mental health issue, and it's something that the Vikings have known about and been dealing with for about 3 or 4 weeks. And he's played those first 2 games despite that, And I don't, there's been all kinds of rumors out there on the internet about what actually happened or what finally triggered it or whatever. And I'm not going to go into that because none of it has really been verified. So I don't expect bad rumors about him. He is going through some issues, and right now the Vikings are trying to help him get through that. I don't know if there was an incident with police, as some people have reported. There may have been, but I don't want to elaborate on anything that I've heard until it's confirmed. So I guess let's hope everything for the best for him. Yeah, it's scary, and I did see a confirmed report that something did happen at a hotel. That the police were called, but they said it wasn't. It was reported as like a threat, but they said it wasn't an credible threat, and that Griffin didn't have any firearms. Yeah. So, and then I think they talked to a couple of the hotel employees, and they said they were satisfied with the police intervention or whatever. And so until we know more, it's you don't want to guess as to what the problem could be, but I don't want to look at that and say, well, that sucks for the Rams game because it's such a personal thing.
Oh,
And it's somebody who's myself who's dealt with depression in my life. It's it's such a just all-consuming thing that you gotta just wish the best for him, and hopefully at the hospital they'll make him feel comfortable and he can start working towards something, because he's a great guy. I mean, he just did an interview on KFan last week talking about like his upbringing, and he's just such a good dude.
I saw him a couple weeks ago at the opening for Top Golf, which is not far from my house, and I had no idea he was going to be there. There were some local celebrities there as well as the media that they gave a preview of the place for it. And he walked by me and I said, Everson, and he turned around with a big smile and he recognized me and I said, how you doing? He's great, and we shook hands, and it was, because I see him in the locker room from time to time, and he moved on, I moved on. I ran into him later, passing him in the hallway as he was either going somewhere and I was as well, and I said, man, I didn't know you were a golfer, and I just got this totally different demeanor. And he looked at me, or he just almost kind of ignored me. He says, I'm not, and just went right past me. And I thought, okay, because I didn't try to interview him. I didn't, he was out on his own. He wasn't in a football situation, so I didn't feel like I had the right to, ask him questions or anything. But I did come away with it. I said, well, he went from very jovial to,
gregarious.
Yeah, to this, just almost, I don't want to I'm not a doctor, but it's like, it wasn't manic depressive, but it was kind of like that,
It was an abrupt enough transition compared to what it was before that you clearly took note of it.
Scratching my head a little bit. And so I thought, well, and I didn't think much of it, but now when you see this, you're just like, wonder what's been going on, I just want to wish him the best. It's a tough situation, and yes, he is a wonderful guy. He's a stand-up dude in the locker room. I mean, for the years I've been, he's always there. Win or lose, he will face the cameras and face the reporters and answer the questions. And he is a wonderful guy, a great person to have on the team, and he's a leader in the locker room. And you wonder if him missing or him having these kind of troubles that can affect you mentally before you're going out to play a big game. I mean, you're worried about your teammate, and I'm not trying to put this on. This is all speculation on my part, but I did see a team that was really. Luke and I talked. I mean, he said, they weren't prepared, and this and this and this, and he was right. Luke is a number of guys. He looks at that, and he'll probably talk more about it on Wednesday. And I really want to hear what he has to say, but. You might not prepare as well if you're not mentally ready. If you're overlooking a team, what you're doing is maybe good enough, and then when you're down, you can get flat. I mean, they're playing the game that they play. They describe as being in a car wreck every Sunday, and you have to get your body back up. You have to get your mind back up to go and do it again the following week. There's no human being that can just be up for 16 games in a season like this, and
I wonder if the emotional.
That is right. So
the emotional roller coaster. What happened in Green Bay, and then having that Rams game be a nationally televised game. At the time, the Vikings and Rams were 1 and 2 in most of the power rankings, and they're playing a Buffalo team that was considered the worst team in the league. And so you have to feel if there's any silver lining at all, I guess, that they just overlooked them and that they can, really use this to focus on the Rams. I did just see something pop up in my feed that said Everson Griffin threatened to shoot up the Hotel Ivy. So that's what the police released today. So yeah, it's just awful. It
was fun talking about overlooking the Bills. I made a comment in a story I wrote for the Sports Post that the Vikings were lucky after this debacle that he didn't retire at halftime.
Yeah. So our show's new, and so we've been kind of working on some ideas and different segments and stuff. And I last week started a segment called Fortunately, Unfortunately, or Unfortunately, Fortunately. So if the Vikings win, it'd be something fortunate, but something also unfortunate, and then the vice versa if they lose. And I seriously spent like 2 hours staring at a blank piece of paper, and I don't have a fortunately for the unfortunately outside of they can use this as a wake up call, I guess.
Yeah.
But I know you broke down some Tuesday's Tale of the Tapes is our other segment, which is a lot better. And we did talk about the running game a little bit already. But I think some of the first one was just the turnover battle, which we did talk about as well.
It's huge in every game, but I mean three turnovers by your quarterback. One of them was not all on him, but 3 turnovers and 2 in the red zone is like that's going to sink most ships, and the Vikings aren't apparently not a good enough team to rise above that. So yeah, that was huge. That sunk them.
Yeah, it's I have the game on now and rewatching it. It's you just feel like that they dug that hole and then they just panicked afterwards. It's just you're right. The second half is probably the most boring half of football I've ever seen. Nothing's happening.
Second one was penalties. The second.
Yeah.
And those 2 on the first drive, you saw those when, Linval Joseph, another one of your leaders, what was he thinking? And, one of the, I think Wilson somebody had him wrapped up, on third down and, relatively long. They had Josh Allen wrapped up for the sack. And here comes Linval late to the party, puts his head down and just drills the quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, they're off the field, but no, then that extends the drive. And then on the next series, Anthony Barr, who we should talk about him a little bit later, had a face masking penalty out of bounds, which extended the drive another 15 yards. I mean, that's 30 yards you're giving, this offense, you're giving them life, and they end up and take it in. So, I mean, those were the first pronounced. They only were penalized 6 for 59 yards, whereas Buffalo was penalized 12 for 84. But you know what that says to me is the Vikings stopped trying, The Bills were still trying to win this game, and that's why they were, being aggressive and getting penalized.
There's been a lot of talk about the Aaron Rodgers rule, and especially against the Packers, how that changed the outcome of the game. But yeah, that Linval he had to have known what he was doing, and he just did it anyway. Just all of this, to me, this isn't the most spicy take ever, but boils down to like the team just seems to be making all these undisciplined moves, and that is such the antithesis of what you think of when you have a Zimmer-led team. And I just don't know. One of our clients who lives in Toronto was texting me during the game and said, "Hey, what is there turmoil in the locker room? Like, what is going on? I don't understand why the Vikings are playing so bad." And we've touched on this, but with the penalties on top of it, I don't know what the hell is going on. What Zimmer's explanation was. Like I said, I think I heard 2 conflicting reports. One was that they weren't overconfident, and another one that maybe they were. Did you hear anything specifically from Zimmer about how the game, what his thoughts were on what happened? Or
I'm probably remiss of not doing this, but I only watched like the first little bit of his press conference because I was so disgusted and I wanted to go on with my life. I have not.
That was the best.
I usually rewatch all his press conferences, and see what his I think, I saw a little bit of deer in headlights for him. I don't think he realized what he saw, but I think you hit the word just a couple of minutes ago, and you said undisciplined, describing Linval Joseph. I mean, that's what I think happens when you're not mentally peaked, you're not mentally primed and ready, because all of a sudden, you just figure you can play this team. You don't have to be, on your P's and Q's and in your spots and doing everything and going through everything in your mind that you need to that you've been practicing all week. I saw all kinds of undisciplined stuff out there. And, I think that's the mark of a team that didn't think, just thought they could come in and win this game and with their C performance, And Linval, when has he ever done anything like that? Never.
Yeah,
Never. Was you thinking, I got to get to this quarterback early? He's a rookie, so to get him, fearful. I mean,
Yeah.
Where did that come from? But yeah, undisciplined. I totally agree. And I mean, and you're the guy that you just mentioned from Toronto saying, is there turmoil in the locker room? Well, now we know that there probably is. With Gibson, there's some stuff going on. So I probably lean towards this kind of excuse, reason that too much. But I think everything stems from that. If you're not mentally pumped up and ready to give your best shot out there this in a given week, you can and will get beat. Can't believe they got beat this bad, though.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, to be honest. And you mentioned Barr, and I think that the last tail of the tape was the inability to stop Allen from scrambling.
For 39 yards and 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns.
By a rookie quarterback. Holy buckets.
My dad looked at me and he goes, my dad is completely computer illiterate. He might as well be like a prospector from the 1850s. But he had his phone out and he goes, how do I get on Pro Football Focus? And I said, why? And he goes, I got to look up Anthony Barr. He goes, there's a reason they haven't paid him. They're not going to keep him. He's disappeared. What is he doing? He got hurdled on that one play. I think there was a few plays with him that were just like, ugh. And so, in conjunction with the tail of the last tail of the tape being the scrambling of Allen, what do you attribute that to? Were they not prepared? I mean, I saw quotes from I forget who on the defense, but they said they knew that he was a mobile quarterback and that they were quote unquote prepared for it, but it didn't seem like they were.
It really didn't. You're right. I don't know what happened there, but there were people missing assignments. I mean, I don't know if that, I was reading somewhere that they at some point seemed like they had a spy on him, and other times they didn't. Sometimes that was Barr, and maybe he was. I mean, when I think he was supposed to be on watching the quarterback coming out of there on the touchdown run. I want to go back to Barr. I think your dad's right. I have been vocal all offseason saying sign this guy because I still remember what he did his rookie year. I mean, he just flashed in no uncertain terms, and I said, so he's got that in him. He's had some injuries since then, and I just thought, he's got the size, he's got the ability, the skills, but my only question is, does he have the want to? I saw him standing on a play one, and the play's running by him. And I didn't go back and look. I got to go back and find it and rewatch it because I was blown away. I said, how come these guys are not racing to the ball and like they usually do? And I just saw too many plays where he was caught unaware. And I will give him a little bit on when he got leapt by Allen.
Yeah, that was an amazing play.
That was a heck of a move by him. But part of it is, with the rules that we were talking about, the tackling was Barr probably didn't want to light him up either, even though he could have out in the middle of the field. He probably anticipates the guy's going to go down, and so he let up. And
it almost seemed like he was going to shoulder check him as opposed to tackle him. I don't think his arms were up that way.
Right. So I'm going to give him a little bit of a break there, but man, the rest of the game I saw some plays from him that just I got to go back and watch more of him in action and just see what the hell's going on.
It's so funny you say that because my dad was asking like how you guys watch individual players on video, like what resource that was, and he said the exact same thing. He goes, he's not trying, like he doesn't. Something's going on where he just doesn't have the motivation that he needs. And clearly in the NFL, I mean, you have to be. You would think so, but maybe he's upset about it or something. But he seems to be coasting, And I'm not an X's and O's guys like you and Luke are as much, but it just seems like you don't see him making the plays he used to,
Yeah, I agree, and I don't get it. When you look these guys in the eyes of in the locker room and listen to them talk, I mean they're not playing, but you can tell which ones really eat, sleep, and drink football, and which ones, they're professionals who are being paid for a job to do. And, I think they're all that to a degree. But I'm not going to say that Anthony Barr is Bryant McKinney because I don't believe he is, or Bernard Berrien. But I always wonder, just sometimes when I see him on the field on Sunday, just God, this guy's just not going nuts and trying to get his nose in every play. And another thing we should probably bring up, and more speculation we don't know anything about, is Eric Kendricks is not having the best season either.
Yeah.
I know his brother's going through some major stuff. You wonder how much that affects him, but he signed a nice contract in the off season, and he spent the past 3 years on this team. I think it's 3, leading the team in tackles, being everywhere in every play, and I don't see him running around either. I don't know. The linebackers are letting people go. How about that touchdown that they had? I think their third score or whatever. Could that guy be any more open?
Yeah, that's the one I was referencing earlier. Mike Hughes, there was like a fake wide receiver screen, and Hughes dropped off the receiver, and he was completely wide open. Hughes had a lot of bad plays, and he almost fumbled that punt return as well. I wonder, the announcer for the game said something that stuck in my brains. Early in the game, he goes, if you want to beat the Vikings, especially at home, you need to pass a lot on first and second down the field. And I think that it wasn't a home game, but my concern with Philly last year was that Peterson had somehow cracked the AA gap blitz code and put together a blueprint to show people how to beat this Vikings defense. And they haven't been the number one defense that we thought they'd be. There has been some gaudy numbers. Sheldon Richardson, for example, we've talked about a lot on Purple Journal podcast. But you're right. I mean, Kendricks was omnipresent last season. He was everywhere.
Right.
I don't know if they're scheming away from that, because I don't know enough about it. But it just seems like the defense. I saw a stat that the Vikings are 28th in the league in regards to time of possession, and that is on the offense obviously as well, but it doesn't seem to be the recipe that we thought it'd be with Cousins coming in and Sheldon Richardson. My prediction that the Vikings would the average, I think I said 14 points or less for the Vikings defense, down from they had 15.8 points allowed per game last season. It just I don't know if the cat is out of the bag. And if so, if we can fix it, or if we're like in a Norv Turner situation where he couldn't figure out, how to overcome the curveballs people were throwing him. So what do you do?
They always say about it in this league, you come up with something new, people figure out what it is, and they make an adjustment to it. And the tell of a really good coach is to be able then to take that and make another adjustment on your end. And people were speculating after this game that teams are starting to figure out Mike Zimmer's defense. There's a lot of in his defense. There's a lot of misdirection and causing confusion for the quarterback on their pre-snap reads. Like who's gonna blitz and who's not. But then ultimately they don't blitz a lot because part of the thing is for Zimmer's defense is that be in your own lane and make your own plays. So. I don't know. So maybe that's what's going on, where people are adjusting and they are figuring out and know how to counter it, because it sure looked like that against Philadelphia, and it certainly looked like that by this rookie quarterback Josh Allen, who just all of a sudden looked like a leader. It's amazing. So Zimmer's going to have to adjust, and that's what good coaches do, and I think he's good enough to do that. He'll figure out something to counteract what other people are doing, what other people are seeing on tape and then doing on Sundays against his defense. I hope. If not, boy, then you're down to our personnel's better than theirs or not. You better hope they are. And in Vikings' case, who signed them all to long-term contracts, this is who they have.
Yep, that's what I was earlier saying. With all this young core, everyone's excited about. Well, what if it just doesn't work? And again, I don't want to over-exaggerate a single game, but to me, I just saw flashes of like 3-13.
Oh my!
Zimmer getting fired. It just mainly because my entire life, being 34 years old, the year after the Vikings blow an NFC Championship game, they always implode. On the field and off the field, there seems to be, the Corey Stringer thing, and after the Giants game, Dennis Green quit. The Sperano thing happened this year. Now Everson Griffin is having issues. It just seems like, for whatever reason, they lost that it factor that they had last season. I mean, you said it best. I mean, a rookie quarterback who's played 2 quarters should not be able to do what he did. They should, with the quote unquote mastermind that Zimmer is on defense, you would have thought that they would have just dominated him, and it just didn't happen. And like I said, it's a nightmare because I just don't want this to happen. Really, I was so sure that things were going to go a certain way, and I'm not saying that they won't. But the idea of us going back to the days like when we had Tavares Jackson, and I was just like, ugh, that really scares me, considering I spend about 18 hours a day working on Vikings-related stuff. But typically we don't. On Tuesdays we look backwards, and then on our Friday show, which is we do our Tuesday show and a Friday show, both at 9:30, except for this morning. Then we look forward to the next game, but because the Vikings are playing on Thursday night, I thought we could talk about that game a little bit too, since we have about 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes. Here's a cliche softball question to get this rolling. How much emphasis do you put on this game being a must-win?
Oh, that's funny. I started off the season saying that the San Francisco game was a must-win because it was a home game against a lesser opponent or perceived lesser opponent. Actually, they really are now since they lost a quarterback and running back. But
yeah, they got some bad luck going.
Yeah, and I said that one they got to have because I thought you might lose up in Lambeau, and then you've got these next 2 games, the Rams and Philadelphia on the road. So if you're hoping to get a split there, well, now that of course in that mentality I overlooked the Buffalo Bills, and good thing I wasn't playing. It would have been worse. No, I'm kidding. So must win. Yeah, that's a good question. I think before the season, you're thinking maybe if you get a split of those 2 games, you'd be really pleased. And now if you got a split of these next 2 games, I think you'd be ecstatic.
Yeah.
The Rams are looking like the better of those 2 teams. Vikings handled the Rams last year.
Definitely.
They had basically the same. All the Rams beefed up their defense and improved some things in the offseason. They really did improve, and now they look like world beaters. So this one's going to be tough, and hopefully you have the right emotional balance remaining in your brain when you go into Philly, and you can get that one. I would say it's a must to get a split here. That's what I would say.
And there's going to be people that say, well, it's Green Bay lost and the division's still up in the air. We tied them at home, and mathematically, we don't mean mathematically. It's a must-win because obviously things can change. But to build off of what you're saying, I do think that they need to have a really good showing on Thursday night to show that they can bounce back, that this game was indeed a fluke, that they're the team that we thought they were. I, for some reason, have a lot of faith that that's going to happen. I feel like they're you got to think that outside of them just getting out schemed, which I haven't heard a ton of that it's just these guys have played together for a couple years now. They're veterans. They were so cohesive last season. It's just weird to think that the Rams are the team that added all these pieces and people were wondering how it was going to fit, and the Vikings are the ones seemingly having all these chemistry problems. So yeah, I do believe if they go into the Rams game and they get this shit kicked, it could be a long season.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know if I've seen a couple things from Dalvin Cook said he should play, and then I keep getting all these contrary headlines. Another one was that he was day-to-day and he'll see, and then I saw like 5 hours later, Star Tribune talked to him and he said he should be ready to go on Thursday, and we touched on that a few times, but I do think that the running game needs to improve. You got to start questioning DeFilippo too if they don't maybe start putting some people into chip and protect Kirk Cousins.
Right. Joe, I would agree with you that I forgot what I was going to agree to.
Dalvin Cook is good at football.
Well, I haven't seen him much this year, but he's okay. No, I know what I would agree with. They have to come to play on Thursday, and even if they get beat, if they show up and battle the Rams for 60 minutes, because this game could easily turn sideways in a heartbeat as well. If they get down, and all of a sudden they start believing, oh God, we're terrible, we're not going to do anything this year. But if they show up and play and compete and play like they can, against the Packers coming back from being down and battling back, or even the what's their face, the 49ers. So that's what they have to do to save the season. They don't have to win this one for me. They have to show that they care and they can play and they are good enough to play with arguably the best team in the league. That's what I'm hoping.
And then they got the Eagles the next week. It's just a onslaught.
And Carson Wentz back too.
Yeah, and I think we might get a little gruff from people saying we're over-exaggerating, but I think you're completely dead on. I think that if they lose, but it's a hard-fought battle, I'll feel a lot better. I don't think the Eagles are as infallible as they seemed last year. Granted, they just got Wentz back, like you said. But yeah, it's incredibly important. And it's just really, really crappy that we're actually talking about this right now. I'm still kind of it's surreal. I feel disconnected from it. Like, I cannot believe that happened. And I cannot believe that we're having this conversation. And we could be on one side of the fence. They could, get it together and win, or they could continue to struggle because the things that they're doing bad are things that can be exploited on a regular basis. I don't know. I think it's. I'll be interested to see what DeFilippo does in regards to protecting Cousins a little bit more. Having Elflein out there might help the run game, might help in general. I don't know. Have you heard if they've made any decisions as to where did he end up playing last week? Guard?
I think so. I didn't even pay attention to it. I just heard his name called a couple times, so I know he got in there. I suspect as the game went pear-shaped, as Paul Allen calls it, they probably didn't play him a whole hell of a lot just to make sure they didn't re-injure him. But Brian O'Neill was back in there because Rashad Hill didn't last very long, and it's still a week to week with this line. But I think you'll probably who knows how much time Kirk and Elflein have had a chance to practice the center snap. So we'll see. You're not going to get much information out of them. They had an open locker room yesterday, and today's their day off, I believe. I guess there's going to be some sound coming out of Winter Park today, and then tomorrow players' day off, or no availability, and then they're off to LA. So it's a short week. It's going to be fast and furious and kind of nuts. So it's at this point, Joe, it's speculation on where he'll play. But I guess if I would guess, I would think they would try to slot him in at
guard
center and have
Jones play guard.
Yeah,
they got to do something. I mean, even like I said, putting someone in there to chip, putting Morgan and maybe doing 3 tight end sets like the Eagles did.
Yeah, but who's going to block for Riley Reef? Oh my God.
Yeah, he got burned.
He was a swinging gate last week. I hate to say, I haven't seen that bad a performance out of him since he's become a Viking, and that was difficult. They were just racing by him over there.
Yeah, scary. This offensive line thing has stuck in my craw for such a long time. It's kind of a running joke on the Purple Journal podcast. I'm really super biased towards Big Ten players in general, but in regards to the offensive line especially, because they're just huge brutes that play, NFL-style football. If this season continues the way it does and Cousins keeps fumbling because he's getting hit, I'm going to get pretty pissed off in regards to, going back, not to harp on the draft, and that's not the reason they lost or anything, but it just seems like the lack of emphasis for the offensive line last season notwithstanding, is such a strange omission for a team that has so much to lose and invested so much at the quarterback position and had to know what Cousins' weaknesses were, and they basically didn't really do anything to shore that up. They drafted O'Neal, and he's played better than expected, and they made a trade for Jones, which kind of was telling. But, Christ almighty, wake me up. I feel like I'm in a nightmare. That's a good way to end the show. Jeez. You had the quote of the year, by the way, with the... I didn't watch it because I wanted to get it over with and get on with my life. That's the... that should be the tagline for PurplePTSD.com. I want to...
That's how we deal with this stuff, Joe. We just try to get away from it.
I do feel like as I'm getting older, I'm less, like you mentioned earlier. I don't feel like I'm as crazy emotional about it, mainly because I look at this as a job more than anything else, so I have to suppress those emotions. Mm-hmm. And so subconsciously I feel like, okay, at least we don't have to change PurplePTSD.com for another season,
Right.
But we'll see what happens on Thursday. Stay tuned to we're going to be doing the Purple Journal podcast Wednesday night. That'll be live and then posted. We also have a show called The Starting Lineup, which is hosted by Giotto Troia. Sorry, man. I'm bad at pronouncing names. That's on from 4 to 6 on Wednesdays. And then we'll be back on Friday. But keep an eye on both PurplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com in regards to our radio content, our articles. We're posting content every single day. And we're not going anywhere despite the left turn the season might be taking. So we appreciate the diehards who are still here listening to the show, and we hope that you can return on Friday. I think, Joe, have you done your game preview article yet?
I have not. I'm going to probably write it up tomorrow morning to post sometime on Wednesday before the game. So,
all right. Well, keep an eye out for that. That'll be on both sites. I'm going to be writing a panicked article. So that's basically going to be in all caps as well. But this this has been Morning Joe's. Thanks for listening, and we will be back on Friday.